budgetary process, getting back to regular order. Looking at the current spending breakdown, returning back to that regular order because it engages you on this budgetary process. And then how do we fix that process? Okay? So here's our 5 steps, okay? So the president submits a budget request to Congress, okay? The lawmakers then make their own budget, okay? And because the House is always first in it always starts in the House. Then it comes back, we come to some agreement on that. Sometimes we don't. But then we send it to the appropriations process to the relevant committee, subcommittee, okay? Once it goes to the subcommittee, they come out with that appropriation bill. It goes to the full committee. Once it goes to the full committee, it comes to the House floor. Once we vote on it, it goes to the Senate committee, okay, subcommittee, and works its way through. Now, if our budget and their budget are ideally the same, it goes right to the president, okay? If it doesn't, it goes to a conference, okay? Once we get all these, once we get it all the way through the process and the president signs it, it becomes a law, okay? Does that make sense?
Paul, could you just talk about authorization versus appropriation?
Yes. Okay. So when you're passing a budget, you're authorizing, okay? This budget is telling you these are the numbers we're going to look at. And you define those authorizations within that circumferencing of that bill. Does that make sense? Okay? So they got to match up. If you don't have the authorization language and you don't have the appropriation language, you're not going to be able to enact any part of that law. Or so it seems. Okay? Next one. So we have to start looking at the breakdown of these budgets. And this is what's crucial here is we're going to look at a 20-year span here. And this gives you appropriate breakdown of the budget, okay, based on discretionary. This is the defense in 1992. This is the non-defense. Here's the interest, major health programs, Social Security, and other mandatory spending. What you would put in here is Medicare or Medicaid. Does that make sense? Okay? Now you're going to start to see this movement. So now we've got 30 or 20 years here. Okay? Defense has come down from 21.9. It's actually gone down to about 18.9 at this point in time. Non-defense came up just a little bit. Our interest is abnormally low, even for this time. Our major health programs now are expanding. You see Social Security starting to expand a part of the GDP, as well as the other mandatory spending. Okay? So notice the numbers. Here's our budget at $2 trillion. Here's our budget in 2012 at $3.5 trillion. So these are getting bigger. Okay? And what I'm trying to show you is, in a normal budgetary process, I've got control, or Congress has control, of these 2 segments. Not anything else, unless it's major legislation. Does that make sense? So what you're watching is these mandatory spendings on autopilot. So they're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Now you're looking at $4.93 trillion in 2022, and maybe even surpass. So this is a projection. But look at where the healthcare program, Social Security, look at the mandatory, look at the defense and non-discretionary and the interest. Okay? These are where we're headed. So we have to have a conversation about these numbers. The numbers got to make sense. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, next one. How do we reel this in? We've got to cut up the government's credit card. You live within your means, and so does the federal government. They've got to live within their means as well. Okay? So I talked to you a little bit about that. This kind of gives a little bit of a flow program. It goes to the appropriate subcommittee. Once they report, it goes to the committee. Sent to the floor. Once it's passed, it goes back over to the Senate. The same thing. If this matches this, it goes to the president. He can veto or sign it. Okay? So kind of the process. So we're good at this. Okay? So in 2015, we passed 26 amendments on the floor. This is an example of one of them. It's bipartisan, even though there's only one person on the Democratic side voting for me. I actually had 10 nays on this one, but it actually passed. We actually usurped everything we did in the last Congress the previous 2 years in 1 year. It means you have to stay on the floor a long time. Oh, and by the way, these aren't just my ideas. Many of those ideas came from people in this room. Okay? And so you can actually make this work. As of last year, the first part of this session, I'm now responsible for 16% of all the appropriation amendments. Why is that important? That's one office in 535. What happens with the rest of the 534? Do what I just did. You have the ability to start balancing this budget, okay? And this is the power of the purse. Go ahead, next one. So here's Bill County Veterans Affairs. These are some of the things that we actually looked at. We prohibited a loophole from hiding delays from veterans' health care. It shouldn't take an act of a congressman or congresswoman to get health care for our veterans, but that's what it's taken, believe it or not, okay? Prioritizing the funds to upgrade their IT. Reducing the claims backlog, big key here. They're huge backlogs. And then we also want to put additional resources on this Board of Veterans Appeals. Currently, the backlog is 7 years. 7 years, folks. So once a veteran hits that appeals process, they have to wait to get in the line. That's wrong, okay? So these are some of the things that you've taught us where to start making some changes. Okay, so these passed, okay? Energy and commerce, blocked $18.7 million for the new climate model. Folks, there's 70 or 80 climate models going on, for criminy sakes. Coordinate, okay? Supported the Inspector General's Department of Energy, protected important federally dams. We want to make sure that these dams stay in place. They're a great aspect, particularly for Arizona in regards to water. We have the most articulate water law in the country. And we start looking at the budget investigations to look at the backlog of some of these projects. Okay? So once again, very bipartisan, okay, and pass. Okay? Here's another one. Overreach of the I can't say this word. Affirmatively furthering fair housing. Say that 5 times. Okay? So what this basically is saying is the federal government is going to look at your communities. They're going to look at your neighborhoods. If it's not balanced based upon a broad section of people, how much they make, what religion they are, what ethnicity they are, they will change it. Bingo, absolutely. And this will actually be based upon any monies coming back from housing from HUD coming to our state. And they can enforce this. I'll just give you an example. So remember a while back when we raised the drinking age to 21? Wyoming said, listen, if you can fight in the military at 18, you can drink at 18. So what the federal government did is withheld all their highway funds, and it brought them to their knees. So this is actually, I was blocking this successfully all the way through. This is now in effect based upon the last appropriation process called the Cromulus. Okay? So what happens when Congress doesn't pass a budget? It reverts to the last budget that was passed, which was under Nancy Pelosi's era, okay? That's what happens. That's what they call a continuing resolution, okay? So a lot of those things go away. There are little riders sometimes that can amend it, but for the most part, it's put into the agencies and spent accordingly to the dictations that she placed in here at that time. Make sense? It doesn't make sense, but it does make sense, okay? Now you're going to start to see patterns of why spending isn't going the way we're trying to dictate. Is because it's not being dictated today because we're not passing a budget. It's going back to the time of Nancy Pelosi when she was Speaker of the House. That's why it's so important to pass a budget. Hold on.
How is the increase in the baseline budgeting figured out? Who does
That's based upon from the agencies and from the president.
But that's automatic.
Well, they try to put it in, okay? It's not always automatic. They try to put it in, but it's up to Congress to say yes or no. You'll notice that this number has gone down in discretionary spending, okay? Same thing, defense filing went up just a little bit last year, and there's some pluses and minuses to that. But so the baseline budgeting, they always ask for the request, they're not getting that request. Does that make sense? Okay. Next one. Okay, so here, now pretend this was last year, so let's figure you got that right, changed it. So when was the last time Congress passed all 12 appropriation bills on time? Okay, how many appropriation bills did the House pass last year? And how many appropriation bills did the Senate pass last year? Let's go in reverse order. Let's take the Senate. How many, what do you think?
0.
You're right. Zippo, zippity-doo. How about for the House? Huh?
2, I see.
3 or 4? There's 6. There's actually a 7th one done, but we didn't have the fortitude to address the Confederate flag. Okay, so we got 6 of them done. So when was the last time that Congress passed all 12 appropriation bills? 1796. Come on, let's get some dates. Come on.
94. 96.
Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner in the back. There you go. Okay? But now you're starting to see a pattern. This budget predicates you for the whole year. It's the first order of business for Congress is setting a budget. And 1997? Now we've rewarded bad behavior for so many bureaucrats and so many members of Congress. Now you're going to see why this thing is off its rocker. Okay? Next one. Here's some of the basics. Single bill, what an omnibus is a single bill that puts everything together based on that CR. Everything, omni means everything on. And it's non-germane. I mean, anything and everything is piled on here. So you get good legislation mixed in with really bad legislation. And the reason they do it is because they failed to do the spending bills. Okay? Wrong answer. Okay. Well, we've looked at deals over and over and over again with these omnibus bills. And that's why this is broken. They're large in size. That's the omnibus, the huge size. It continues the spending process with no oversight. To give you an example on this one, this omnibus that actually occurred, I'll tell you exactly how it occurred. Okay? You already had hints of it from the majority leader. The majority leader just said, hey, listen, we're going to raise the caps. Remember that what they call the BCA or the sequestration? Okay? You sent me there to cut federal spending. That actually cut federal spending. Okay? Wasn't pretty because we didn't have big boys and girls that wanted to go in surgically to find the waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Well, what this did is, everybody walked in, said, listen, we're going to raise the caps, no riders. Everybody said, okay, that's it. So all those little things that we were working for to do good legislation were removed out of legislation. Okay? But it continues that spending based upon when Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. Okay? So important. So important because regardless of where you sit, we've changed over this eight years or 6 years. Okay? And new priorities have to be based upon that. It's broken. Okay? Here's some of the things that actually were funded. The refugee resettlement program, the executive amnesty, no matter how you look at it, sanctuary cities, Planned Parenthood, Obamacare, and breaks the sequester caps. Okay? So you're going to see something that's starting to come out in this application. So we have to assert our power of the purse. Okay? Here's what we've made a proposal. Let's get back to going to the most important things first, and that's the budget. Let's get back to regular order. What you're seeing right now in Congress is Paul Ryan believes they made an agreement last year, and there's a fixed number. The president was part of that agreement too, okay? Did the president abide by that number? Nope. He jacked it up. So why not the House do their own budget, let the Senate do their budget, let's go to conference, let's get this done. By the way, here's why it's important for me. What if I told you that this year, the Congressional Budgetary Office has said, this next year looks like it's the 4th largest deficit in U.S. history. We better be doing a darn budget. That's where I'm at. That's where the majority of people are at, okay? Utilize that power of the purse. Pass the 12 appropriation bills. Allow for an open process. Listen, if Paul Gosar can do it, every other member of Congress can do it. It just takes time, okay? Decentralize the power from leadership. That was part of the problem with John Boehner. And push back against the Obama, particularly the regulation, okay? Now, both sides have done this. It just so happens the president right now is a Democrat in the White House. But both sides have been doing this. Okay? That's why we find ourselves in such a bad problem. Okay? Next one. So when Paul Ryan took it, he said, listen, we're going to decentralize this, allow your voice to occur. Well, he's 0 for 2 with Western states. Okay? He did do some things that he made a promise. He decentralized some of the power, gave it back to a bunch of us underlings that are out there in God's green acres. He's allowing for a transparent process, or so he says. We haven't seen it yet. So these are promises. I did not vote for the speaker. I said it pointedly. I was one of the first people who said I would not vote for him. I'm going to be his conscience. Okay? Because something needs to change. And the reason I'll tell you that is when John Boehner did anything through the bills, Paul Ryan always had to sign off on any of the appropriations or financial pages. So he's part of the problem from what I saw. I wanted somebody new, okay? That had a pedigree, okay? But this is how you can reach me. And there's one thing before we start taking some questions I need to explain to you. It's called the Anti-Deficiency Act, okay? Steve forgot to put it in, okay? Why is it important, okay? Well, the Anti-Deficiency Act basically states this. Congress must pass the law in specific term, ending in a statute, and fund it to those specific terms before the agencies can actually spend a dime. Okay? So, let me backtrack. Remember that amnesty? Pull it aside. No matter how you feel about immigration, okay? I'm going to go back, come back toward this. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yeah. I want to bring this up to a point here. And there's a reason why. Okay, well she'll find it. Executive amnesty. It was an executive decision. It was an executive order. Congress has never weighed in to deferred action, regardless. Okay? There it is. Okay? So what ended up happening is there was no money there. Okay? So what the president did is he reached into another fund that was commissioned for legal immigration and tried to take, and is actually taking money out of there. That's illegal. That's the definition of the Anti-Deficiency Act. Okay? You have to have the authorization and then the appropriation balancing off before you could spend it. Okay? Let me give you another example. Climate change. Congress or carbon taxes. Congress has never weighed into this arena, no matter how you feel. Okay? Because there's no authorization, no appropriation, when the president tries to spend money that way, he cannot spend that money. In the new Interior bill that we just saw, that we had a conversation with Sally Jewell, there's $6 billion allocated for those studies. You have to have that conversation with Congress. We're the legislative arm before you can do that. Okay? Now what's so sad about this is, when we talked about immigration, I brought this up in conference 3 different times to the speaker at the time. What about the Anti-Deficiency Act? What about the Anti-Deficiency Act? And he nodded his head. And when he did nothing about it, I asked him on the floor, why didn't you do something about the Anti-Deficiency Act? He goes, I have no clue what you are talking about. Now does it make sense about this 1997? Things are amok here. Okay? So I said, would you bring a staffer down? So he brings a staffer a little older than me. And he said, listen to Gosar. Tell me if he's right. Explain just what I explained to you. And he said, he's right. Now to the speaker, and kudos, he brought his whole staff and the majority leader's whole staff to our office to learn about the Anti-Deficiency Act. Okay, I'm glad you're sitting down because it gets worse. Okay, we come home from recess. Nothing happens. I go back to the speaker and say, Mr. Speaker, why aren't you enforcing the Anti-Deficiency Act? Paul, what do you want me to do? Go to court? I said, absolutely. And it's not just any court. It's the Supreme Court. He said, so they're out of session. What do you want me to do? I said, they signed up for this job. Bring them back. Doesn't mean you're going to win. But you need to balance off the power of the executive and judicial branch by restoring the legislative power. This is what's wrong in Washington, D.C. And you can't fix it unless I tell you the story. Is that fun? No, it is not fun to be challenging a speaker, especially when you're a dentist from Timbuktu. But beauty's in the detail. But this also sets you free because then it allows you to have a civil conversation about the issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my pitch has been fivefold this year. Number one, get back to regular order. Let the House do its job, let the Senate do its job. And do it now and do it early. Because the Senate doesn't want to do any of this. We need to put it on the Senate majority's desk and have the American people work their wisdom. Say, listen, get to work. Start doing your job. Because the Senate hasn't been doing squat. Have an open voice about this. We've been doing all this oversight. Now enforce it by the Anti-Deficiency Act. Start pulling this money out and showing people. Put it back in the Treasury. Make the process do the process. We shouldn't be scared of the process. How about putting some things on the table that are actually veto-proof? I'll give you a couple of them. Coming back to it. Okay. The other thing is let's start bringing the states into play. The 10th Amendment. If you look at a lot of these executive actions, who's been saving the day? It's been the states. We've been trampling all over the states. Whether it be immigration with Texas, whether it be the waters of the U.S. and North Dakota, over and over again, we need to start working with our states. So I did tell you, putting stuff on the president's desk and making him either say, listen, hey, this is a good idea, and veto, or trying to veto, and override a veto. People say it's not possible. Okay, I'm going to go to health care. I hated my health care before, I hate it even worse now. Everybody paying more for their health insurance? Yeah. Right. So how about if I told you that the medical insurance industry actually is void as an exemption from the Sherman antitrust laws? That they share every bit of information from this side to this side with each other. And they price fix. They collude, and they're probably racketeering. Almost guaranteed. Wouldn't you all like to break them up? It's going to give you more opportunities, cheaper prices, and new options. Now, I'd like to see that come to the floor. And I dare any Republican or Democrat to vote for their insurance company over their constituency.
Yeah.
The last time I got that into a bill, it passed 409 to 16. This is a bipartisan issue. Number two, Obamacare is a lot cheaper, right? Then why did we cut our health savings accounts? How about we put more money back in there and allow you to start making those decisions to help you pay for it? How about we allow you to roll it over, build interest? As long as you use it for health care, who cares? Once again, I'm going to ask you the question. Which Democrat and Republican is going to vote against you and embrace the IRS? Not today. Remember, I came in 2010, and the anger was 1x. Today, the anger is 2x and growing. Here's the third one. Where's my VA guys, my veterans? Thank you very much for the service. I'm going to give you a choice. How about if you like the VA, you can stay in the VA. But if not, you can come out to the regular marketplace, get a premium of your choice. Uncle Sam will pay the premium, the co-pays, and the deductibles. You see anybody you want to see.
Sure.
By the way, it's cheaper. It's actually cheap. Okay? And there you go. We already got an infrastructure. Thank you very, very much. But you know what? Somebody came up to me and said, you know, Congressman Gosar, you're pretty fiscally responsible. What happens when the bill is $200 and $300 million? Said, best investment I've ever made. Because the very next year I'm taking it out of the VA's budget. You want to compete? You want change in the VA? I'll give you change. You tell me which Republican, which Democrat is going to vote against our veterans. You know what you just did? You rebuilt the marketplace in healthcare. That's going to give whoever the president is a chance to reform. Somebody said, well, you didn't fix everything. For God's sakes, it took us 50 years to destroy medicine. The gall that in Washington D.C. that you can take one plan and fix it all in one plan is stupid. How about this? I make this pitch. Right now, I put more people under insurance. It's cheaper for you. I put more money in your pocket. I want you now to become consumers again. Okay? That's not going to fix everything. But you know what it's going to do? It's going to allow us to unwind this. One piece of the onion at a time. And then we're going to work at those problem areas together. Not Congress telling us what we have to have, but what America would like to have in a patient-centered, patient-friendly, patient-accommodating healthcare system. Isn't it about time we listen to you for a change? The last time I looked in the Constitution, we the people are the government, right? Yeah. This isn't rocket science. There's one last thing that I want to say, and we'll just open it up for questions. People are going to say, well, why aren't they doing the budget? Well, we've made bad habits, right? So what happens after the election cycle this year? It's called a lame duck, where we get to pile on all sorts of things in this thing called the omnibus lame duck. We got people that are getting their wish list. They weren't elected. They lost their election. They're retiring, okay? And each time this happens, whether it's under a Republican or a Democrat, the feeding frenzy's at your expense. So let's make them play like a child in the sandbox, really nice. Let's cut their legs off from underneath them. No lame duck. So if you're going to get this done, you do it in the light of day while we're all watching. Okay? That's the proposal. That's what we're moving out of our office. We, District 4. Okay? And it's getting some legs. The legs we chopped off, we're using the legs to move it across the country. Okay? This isn't rocket science, but we got to get back to the principles and the simplicity of this. Congress has two real powers. The power of the purse and the power of accountability. It's time that the folks in Washington, D.C. understand the same things that we do back there. Okay? I'm done on my tirade. I can get wound up like a
Okay, so we have some ground rules for questions. We're gonna try and go from one side to the other and try and get as many in as we can. Try and
you also have to remember
kind of
on these ground rules. Number one, civility. Number
That's
two,
right.
if you bark and you got a problem, the first thing I'm going to ask you for is your solution.
Right. So Julie,
And if you're not prepared with a solution, sit back down.
So Julie, you want to start with
Who's first?
Frank?
one question, and then we'll move on.
Yes, Frank.
Yes, Paul. One thing that I can't understand is if Congress would cut Obama's monies out for all the illegal things that he has done, he has committed more than 50 impeachable offenses. But Congress in the House don't want to do it because they're afraid of a Negro backlash. Why is it that they come up with this excuse when it is so weak, when it is only 13% of the Negroes committing all the crimes?
No. Okay.
Do we have to take a pledge?
No.
Okay.
So here's the real reason why they don't. Okay? Remember that little thing we talked about? When was the last time we did regular order? 1997. So how many bad orders do you think George Bush has in there? The thing about it is we have to look at ourselves in the mirror because we're as guilty as the Democrats. That's the reason why we don't want to do this process. Because it takes retrospective, introspective review of what our behavior is. That's the real reason. Because there's been plenty of this going around. I'm gonna give a great answer to you because the guy actually says it better than I can. Jonathan Turley, a very liberal constitutional attorney who's actually a friend of mine, made the following comment. We've been making the executive branch stronger and stronger since Wilson, but definitely since Roosevelt. Both sides have done it, culminating with a guy that he voted for twice, taking us to a constitutional tipping point. But we the people are responsible because the people we elected allowed this to culminate on our watch. They placated to us. They teased us with inaccurate numbers. That's why when you hear somebody make the following comment, I will never touch your Social Security. I will never touch your Medicare. Run. The numbers don't lie. Okay? And if we're going to solve this riddle called this budget and $19 trillion, we're all going to have to be big people. From the very youngest to the very oldest. And have an honest conversation. And remember what John F. Kennedy said. It's not what I get from my government. It's what I can do for my government. Okay? I answered in a kind of long way sense there. Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
hi. Could you please explain why there's a difference in laws for documented immigrants and undocumented immigrants?
Because there has been no law passed on undocumented immigrants. Yeah, so there's only one set of standards. So deferred action, like DACA and DAPA, Congress has never weighed in. So there's no standing policy.
Well, if you have
Go ahead.
folks that are here who have worked here, who own property here, say you're Canadian, okay?
Yeah.
And they come here, they register here, they pay their taxes, but they have to leave for 6 to 8 months every year.
Yeah, here's the deal. That's the way the law is written. Until you change that immigration law, that's just the way it stands. And there's equal application. I'll give you another sense. I just got back from Cuba, okay, 3 weeks ago. Okay? One of the reasons I'm there is to balance this playing field because I want a conversation on immigration. So why is it that an illegal Cuban, when they touch land, put one little toe, they now go to the front of the line and you cannot deport them? Okay, they become, in a year and a day, they go back into the legal process of becoming a citizen. That's not good for anybody else. So why do the Cubans have that? It's called wet foot, dry foot. Okay? And now they're coming over like crazy over through the Texas. Okay? To get that. It's wrong. But we have to have, that's why I have a bill that says, listen, we're ending wet foot, dry foot and going back to square one so we can have this conversation about immigration. But until Congress has the fortitude to do that, it stands as it is. Florida can't do it. They're a divided state. It's kind of interesting that it's an Arizonan actually bringing it forward. I was the #1 person they wanted to talk to in Cuba. Hey, you're the guy getting rid of wet foot, dry foot. I also know how I can stop a press conference. That's what they asked me on the last day on the press conference. As I got ready to finish my answer, the lights exploded, the camera blew up, it started on flames, everybody ran out of the room. I have that way with people, I guess.
Yeah, Paul, see, I sent you an email, I don't know if you had a chance to look at that a couple days ago, but Chris Wallace had asked a question in the presidential debates about the EPA, and if you cut the EPA budget, it does nothing to help the deficit. The problem in all of that question is the EPA has such leverage. I think the San Juan power plant in particular is a good example of that. EPA may spend a few bucks to write a regulation, but it ends up costing us, the taxpayer, more than 10 times that amount. And I wonder how you address that and what you're doing with those agencies.
Yeah. $68 billion with compounder interest. Oh, yes, it does make a difference. Absolutely. $4 billion makes a difference. $400,000 makes a difference when you're looking at compound interest of $19 trillion and soon to be $21 trillion. This is not fancy math. The other thing about it is once again, you're imputing rules and regulations that haven't gone through the normal process of Congress, and they come with a cost. One of the things I will tell you, Arizona is ready to take off economically. The problem is the federal government. Yeah, do we need some rules and regulations? Absolutely, but they have to be justly founded. They have to have authorization and appropriation, right? They have to be germane to the law. Because if they're not, you got to go back to the law. But look, I don't have much more to tell you. The numbers don't lie. 1992, you're at $2 trillion. 2022, you're an estimated almost $5 trillion.
They have to be accountable for the results of their actions or of their laws.
Absolutely. I agree. But look at the only reason we're surviving right now is interest is low. abnormally low. If it's normal for this time in history, unpredicated histories, it's bigger than Social Security. And you're toast. Why is that important? Because something else happened this year. In this last omnibus, to prop up the Disability Trust Fund of Social Security, first time Congress stole, let me repeat so I have your attention. The first time Congress stole $114 billion from the Social Security Trust Fund and didn't put an IOU back. Now let me make this perfectly clear. Of this budget, of this deficit of $19 trillion, 52% is OTU, mostly in Social Security, IOUs, Medicare, and some mandatory pensions. What happens if they say, we're not paying any of that? All of a sudden, it's not $19 trillion, it's $9 trillion. Well, that's a much better number for the bureaucrats back in Washington, D.C., isn't it? Ooh, careful, Will Robinson, what you asked for. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I am from Europe.
Yes.
And Europe has universal health care. And why they don't go belly up? There's three reasons. First, the pharmaceutical industry are tolerated to do so much profit over the cost of manufacturing. Second, the hospital cannot do overbilling like $7 for an aspirin or something like that because they will only be paid the real price. So these cut a lot on the so-called, Medicare expense that is wasted, totally wasted at the detriment of the people. America can have universal care, but the government needs to do their job. Also regarding the insurance, the insurance can have only so much alleviating. They cannot refuse a patient when he gets healed and say, we cannot accept this anymore. When he is a patient with them, they have to carry on their expense. They cannot increase only so much percentage on the insurance per year or per thing. And there is a survival.
But there's also another problem. You don't have tort problems like we do. That estimates over $900 billion in defensive medicine costs overall. When I brought up the insurance industry's exemption from Sherman antitrust laws, I forgot to tell you, the insurance industry is foremost in reimbursement for pharmaceuticals. Remember this little guy that came in front of oversight that bought a generic and jacked it up 5,000%? Yeah. Oh, see, once again, you'd never have that if the insurance companies are actually competing. So, from my standpoint, in our system, in our contract, which is our Constitution, that's not the federal government's job. That was a states' rights issue. And there's plenty of opportunity here. There's a lot of problems. I was just with the German Bundestag last weekend from Parliament. They got lots of problems with their healthcare too. They don't actually, here's the deal. Oh, they're really in trouble, okay? And you know what they're having to endure, folks? It's called EMTALA. So people showing up in our emergency rooms have to be treated regardless of who they are. Now Germany's witnessing the problem, and they're in trouble, okay? So there isn't one right model. What I'm suggesting to you for healthcare, what we're seeing right now doesn't work. It's not working. Wait till you see 2017 with the new taxes that are all going to be implemented. It doesn't work. Get over it. But how about we backtrack and start doing this the right way? Instead of my way or the highway, or it's my control over your control, how about we devolutionize this problem back? Healthcare is a personal sport. What you desire is different than you and different than me. And so it needs to be associated that way. And there's a way to do it. Is it going to be a long, drawn-out process? Yeah, it took us 50 years to destroy medicine. But you know what? We can do that. We've always been able to do that. So my rationale is, there were 4 groups that bailed on us, the patients. Pharmaceuticals, the hospitals, the insurer, and the insurance controls those 3 parts. Once you get everybody on one side, now we can take on the tort attorneys. Now, I don't want it to go away. I want it to be rational. Okay? And I can look at a number of the English rule, loser pays, looking at what Oregon does, where you go through mediation, so that you actually hear the rational aspects. They give a verdict and the court knows about the verdict. So there's a lot of opportunities here. Okay? So, but you're right. Yes, yes sir.
Mr. Gosar, obviously I'm a veteran. I was at Fort McClellan, Alabama for way too many years, and that's why I'm broke now. But the Fort McClellan, the bill that is the Fort McClellan Registry Act, Health Registry Act, has been in front of you guys 5 times. You've passed it, and the Senate won't pass it. How's that going to get fixed? I applied for my Social Security Administration benefits, which haven't come through yet because, of course, it's Social Security Administration. But I can't even claim anything through the VA because this doesn't exist. And I can't take care of my family.
Yeah. So no, I want you to hold it in mind, because we're going to answer this, okay? So you said the magic words. The House has passed something, but who didn't?
The Senate.
That's why you need to be talking to Senator McCain and Senator Flake. And they need to be making sure that this process goes forward. They have a voice, and the Senator McCain, has a very prominent voice.
Right.
He's chairman of Armed Services.
Right.
There is no bigger bully on pulpit than his. So why isn't this passing? You know, I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm a growing group of very tired people in the House that once again sees the disrespect, and the application within the Senate is disgraceful to the legislative process.
Right.
That's our problem. And so when you get a chance, I hope that you go out of your way, and I know it's problematic to do so, but Senator McCain needs to hear that from you, and so does Senator Flake.
Well, I made it here tonight, and if the guy ever shows back up in our town, he's going to see me first and foremost.
I'll make sure I pass that word on to him. Okay.
Back here, and then I'll
There's
go
another
up
guy up here,
front.
so. I think he,
Congressman Gosar, I think you need to support cloning because we need to clone you.
no. Talk to my wife, she doesn't want anything to do with it.
We wouldn't have this problem. But now that you've educated the Speaker and his staff on the Anti-Deficiency Act,
Yeah.
can you continue to push him to file suit in federal court and try to get this enforced?
Well, I'm very persistent. I have a new nickname out of the House. I'm called the Hound of the House. Leadership asks me now where people are located to get their vote. That's pretty nice. But 2 weeks ago, on Tuesday night, I actually had dinner with the Speaker. Once again, I made my pitch. He's heard my pitch last year. And then he had a meeting with his Rules Committee, in which a good friend of mine is Michael Burgess. Michael Burgess is an OBGYN, very soft-spoken gentleman. And his comment to the Speaker at that time, over those 4 days have elapsed, and he goes, "Why are we doing what Gosar's proposing?" This is what the Speaker said. "This is the 10th time I've had somebody come and tell me about Gosar's plan." And guess what Burgess said? "Then why don't we just do it?" So, I mean, there's ways, and sometimes there's divine ways. So stay persistent, stay persistent. The thing that Paul's got to realize, he's hung up by a number. Let the system work. The problem for Paul is he's been bred in Washington, D.C. He doesn't know who to trust quite yet. And he's on thin ice. I'll just tell you that right now. He's on thin ice. He's got to produce something. That's why America's frustrated. Just do something. When you find out that these budgets go back to Nancy Pelosi, why haven't you done your job? But my wife will tell you, don't ever clone this guy. He doesn't take out the garbage. He doesn't do honeydews. It's totally the wrong answer.
We're sure glad you're up there. I'd like for you to comment on what's going on with this Republican primary. It's a mess. Would you please tell me what you think?
Well, I mean, you watched what happened in 2010. I'm the product of it. You know, I'm still a dentist impersonating a politician. You've got a bunch of us up there, and in the last 3 terms, you've been sorting. You've been doing the sorting hat. You know, our framers thought about, do we put term limits on them, or do we have a educated electorate? The educated electorate's been doing their job. Over 76% of Congress has turned over in the last 6 years. A lot of them are new. Some like me that most people thought had no legislative experience. They didn't realize they'd written some federal law and some state law and, you know, was very active in some stuff, okay? But there's also a time that we also have to teach the process and go back and look at how we're doing things and reassert ourselves. So when you take those, the pressure's been building and not anything's been getting done. So you're seeing a culmination now of that pent-up pressure. People have fewer options in jobs. The economy's barely ticking. You have more people out of work, permanently out of work, not looking for work. You have the highest unemployment rates. You have the highest utilization of health welfare benefits. Something's wrong. And what they hear from Washington, D.C. is the unemployment rate is under 5. It's not. It's not. And people know that. They're like, how come I can't get a better job? How come I have no money left in my accounts? How come I'm living from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck? And all I hear from these guys back up there, these guys and gals, is, hey, everything's streaming along. It isn't. So when you see somebody that comes up and talks plain spoken, saying, listen, I thought about that. I was about ready to say it, and he said it. It's not political correct, but it means something to me. All of a sudden, that person starts rising to the top. Let's take the other side. You look at Bernie Sanders. No, don't, seriously. I watched Fox the other night, okay, on the town hall. Watch the kids. The kids will tell you, you're about ready to have a generational war. What's in it for them? We've asked them to go to college for higher student loans. For what jobs? $15 flipping burgers at McDonald's? This is ridiculous. And they're rebelling. So they see something's better than nothing. And what they look at, they know they're never going to get Social Security. Folks, I can tell you, I've been there talking to them. They see no history. I'm never going to get Medicare. I'm never going to get Social Security. The only people who are going to get that is Grandma and Grandpa. And now I've been told is it's either them or me. You know, that's not what America was or is. That's not the way I was brought up. We're going to leave it better for our children. But it means that we have to have that conversation. So when you got people, rebellious people, they're saying, listen, I'm tired of this corruptness. Give you another example. Ted Cruz. Guy's the most hated guy in the Senate. You like what the Senate's been doing, sir? No. It's the first thing out of my mouth. The only guy that stood up to Mitch McConnell as a senator. You're looking at another one. I don't like Mitch McConnell. Never have. I'm one of the guys that when we got the majority, I went over and petitioned senators, listen, how about somebody else other than Mitch? But that's what you're seeing right now, is are we so politically correct that we can't have a conversation with America? Are we talking over everybody's head? Have we so flawed the system that it makes no sense to people? People really understand, like, that's gobbledygook coming out of Washington, D.C. That's it in a nutshell. And here, we think it's just a presidential election. Oh, wait. If you're a member of Congress, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you haven't done your job, you haven't engaged, you haven't stood for something, you're going. This isn't a phenomenon in one state. This is a phenomenon across the country. And the other thing is what made us great was the equal application of the law. There was no aristocratic hierarchy that was exempt. We were all held accountable to the same rule of law. How does that work with Miss Clinton? Seriously.
At this point, what difference does it make?
Makes a lot of difference, you know. But my point is when you start looking at it, look at those that are competing on both sides. You got the Republicans in that roar, you got the Democrats in that roar. I hate being you. You got to figure it out. I'm one of them.
Yeah, Paul, this is a kind of boring subject, but, you know, in order for this economy to keep recovering, we're gonna need a real solid infrastructure.
Yep.
And with the Federal Highway Trust getting in so much trouble and almost becoming insolvent, almost yearly, it seems like, you guys finally made a good commitment for 3 years of the highway spending. Do you see a commitment from your fellow folks there to make a long-term commitment to infrastructure spending to get our roads back up? You know, I-11, it's a nice idea, but we have ports of call right now that need updating badly, and our highways need to be redone badly. Do you see a commitment from the other people you're working with?
Yes, with one caveat. Reform the system. And it's a simple one to reform. So why is it that we have small businesses, particularly in transportation and defense, that are going out of business because they can't get a square answer about what the prevailing wage is? You give me those reforms and make it transparent. Then we start using the incubators called states and say, listen, we're going to block grant you this money, and we want to see what you're going to, how you're going to leverage it in private-public partnership. You start doing those simple things, those are the simple things that I ask for. I'm in construction, that's how I put myself through school. This, once again, isn't rocket science. You show me that you're reforming, I'm one of those first guys that's very fiscally responsible that'll come right to the tag. But if you're not doing that, I'm not voting for it. I'll give you another one. The military. Who wants a well-funded military? I do. Okay? So, what if I told you that the military is in violation for the last 15 years from being audited? So the numbers I'm going to give you are close, but pretty accurate. What if I tell my business people here, anybody that does a budget, that 1 out of every $5 or $6 is spent pushing paper in the military, representing over 110 billion with a B dollars wasted every year? What if I told you if we were to reform that system, and by the way, I actually explained that in a plane with Senator McCain, Senator Flake, and then Governor-elect Ducey. Ask Governor Ducey how that conversation went. John McCain agrees with me. Instead of just raising and just throwing money out the door, how about having the fortitude to reform the system from the inside, go to the military and say, listen, you know where the waste is. You find it, you keep it, you spend it how you want. But you give us the oversight on how it occurs so that we can keep tabs on it. You don't need to raise the caps. You just saved yourself $1.4 trillion over the next 4 years. Just that. We have a day of reckoning coming. You just can't throw money at these problems. You have to have reforms. And if I told you about the prevailing wage, I'm not a Davis-Bacon guy. I'm just not, okay? I think we ought to have open competition, but I'll give it to you, okay? I beat my head for 3 years. I've got the highest vote count for getting rid of Davis-Bacon. Time to change. So we actually started looking back at the real problem. So the patient came in. The abscess was the calculations of the prevailing wage. It's done horribly and non-transparently from the Department of Wages and Labor. I just want the calculations to go from them to the Bureau of Statistics, which already does it and is very, very transparent. You know what it does? It puts you in charge. Everybody knows what their wage is. Now you can compete. What if I told you 1 out of every $5 and I'm keeping it in those, now becomes available? Just from the fraudulent calculations in Davis-Bacon. So every 5 bridges you pay for, you're going to get 1 free. You know, crackerjack math. That's our problem. It comes back, that's why I put the emphasis on this budget. Is we have Congress that doesn't understand that. Infrastructure is, when you look at a federal discipline, yeah, infrastructure and interstate commerce is part of Congress's due diligence. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I want to see how Texas does it. I want to give the flexibility to Arizona. How do you do it? I want to use them. I'm not afraid of the states being the incubators. I want to say, hey, you're in charge. Now I want to see what you do. I want this standard, but show me what you can do with what you got. Wouldn't that be interesting? But that's the answer.
Okay,
Penny,
We're
what do you
gonna have,
think?
we're
One
gonna
more or
have time,
two?
no, we're gonna have 3 more questions, unless we can.
I'm trying.
I know.
Okay, so here's the first one.
Ready?
Mr. Congressman, I'm a U.S. Navy Vietnam vet, and I've got problems with the VA in a couple areas. The care I've received is lackadaisical and inept. I've got heart problems. They want to send me down to Tucson to a cardiologist down there. We've got, through Veterans Choice, there's cardiologists at Yavapai Regional Medical Center in Prescott Valley, and I live in Prescott Valley. But they want to send me all the way down there. I've got all kinds of problems with them. I've got abdominal aortic aneurysm and obstruction in my heart now.
Please sit down.
And also, I served on LSTs in Vietnam. We ran the rivers. I've been trying to get Agent Orange benefits, which I should be eligible.
Have you contacted my office?
No.
Okay, so I want everybody to understand that we are a resource, whether it be Social Security, disability, a mortgage problem, an immigration problem, and a veterans problem. So please, there's Penny, Larry's not here tonight, there's Julie. Please come to our office, okay? I said it earlier, it shouldn't take an act of a congressman or congresswoman to get care. It does. And I'm happy to be that. They don't like me. I really could care less, okay? You elected me, I'm here for you. These people will actually take your information, and it's amazing when they start making an inquiry what's going to happen. Can't guarantee it, but I can tell you we've had great success. So please, we like that.
I'm also a registered Republican, so.
But please, Julie is in the Prescott office, and Penny's right over here. She's my district director in intergovernment affairs. And when you're talking to them, you're talking to me. And folks, I just want to tell you something. The thing I'm most proud of is the team I put together on your behalf. We've had people all around the country who have made the following statement. We have not seen a House team like the Congressman Gosar's in over 30 years. Those are some pretty nice words. Customer service, customer service, customer service, and do it with a smile.
I want to thank you for your explanation of the budget. It helps me understand why there's such low esteem for Congress.
I have it. That's the other problem my wife says.
But it really helps. And I would just like to ask you to take back to Congress the frustration that the citizens of the United States and Arizona have about the do-nothing aspect of it. I am sick and tired of hearing about hearings and hearings and hearings. Nothing's happened with Fast and Furious. Nothing's happened with the IRS scandal. The VA scandal continues. Channel 5 talks about it every night recently in the last 2 weeks. And it just goes on and on and on. Benghazi, Hillary, whatever. Please tell Congress that they ignored the Tea Party revolt and dismissed it, and they're dismissing Donald Trump now because of our frustration.
Well, I think everybody's starting to hear it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Everybody's hearing it. I can tell you this right now. People, when they come back from these weeks, this is called a constituent work week, and when they're coming back, oh my God, the flurry of paper that comes out of offices is intense, okay? Show me, I gotta do something, I gotta do something, I gotta do something, okay? Like the sky is falling, the sky is falling. But it makes an important point, is that we have to get back to the law. You might not like the law, but you have to abide by the law until you fix the law. And that means everybody. I am sad that when a subpoena comes from Congress, it means nothing. The only reason we're getting stuff is through Freedom of Information Act, created by people like Judicial Watch. That's how we're having to look at it. Fast and Furious, it's not dead. You're looking at the guy that keeps it alive. Okay? Here's why. We just had a court ruling that says the president can't give executive privilege to this information. We are entitled to see it. Why do you think Why do you think I spent all my time trying to hold up the nomination for Loretta Lynch? I'm just going to tell you why. I want another crack at Mr. Holder. He hasn't been charged with anything. You can't give him immunity. By the way, I got a little bit of time. It goes into the next president. You want to create a habit of conformity to the law? Challenge a former Attorney General of the United States. Yes, sir.
Well, Congressman, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I don't really need an answer, but I'd like to get you on board. Here in about 18 months, we're going to be facing the Cadillac tax on the affordable health care. As you know, a lot of your constituents here in Arizona are retirees, and we are going to get slaughtered by this tax. Pretty much our discretionary income is going to be taken from us. It will be taken out of the local economies, and we will all suffer from it. And I would just want to bring this point up to you and keep it a point of order and do what you can to stand with us, because this is going to be really critical.
That's why I want to go back to my point about removing the Sherman antitrust laws from the insurance industry. In order to fix this, we have to have everybody on one side. That means that when insurance companies are competing against each other, just like doctors compete against each other, okay? All of a sudden there's an incentivization to have all sorts of plans, okay? I don't care about a Cadillac tax. That means, the Cadillac plan. Somebody's being taken care of. That's one less person I have to really worry about, for criminy sakes. And there's plenty to go around. That's why it's so critical to remove the Sherman antitrust exemption from the insurance industry. Because then on our side. Let me explain it. Some people may not explain. So let's pretend for this argument, every single one of you is a cardiologist. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to price fix what the cost of for bypass surgery. Can we do that? No. The FTC is in here breaking us up. You're going to jail and you're paying millions of dollars in fines. That's exactly what the insurance industry knows and does. It's in the form of an actuarial table. Once upon a time, in 1944, when 45 is when the bill was passed, they didn't have good computers. They didn't have good algorithms. They didn't have good mathematicians. So they needed that. That's fine. They don't need it today. They have the best of computers. They have the best of mathematicians. They have the best of the algorithms. Let them just start to compete. There's no guarantees in life. None of you get the guarantees. So why should they get the guarantees? We've been fighting crony capitalism from day one. This makes it a beat for everybody, and it's not partisan. Peter DeFazio and Ms. Slaughter actually have a bill that removes it all the way across the board from all insurance. I'm just concentrating on medical insurance right now because a couple of the other ones have a couple nuances that have to be tweaked before we do that, like life and casualty. But that's my point, is when we're all on the same side, then that doesn't become an issue. But all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid, top of a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid. That's not the diagnosis. We still have a festering wound there. Address the abscess.
Truly the cause of the abscess.
What's
not
that?
even the abscess. The cause of the abscess.
Well, that's the diagnosis. So, I mean, that's
the abscess, you put the bandage and some antibiotic. If you address the cause of
fix
the
the problem.
That's where you go to the source of the problem.
And that's where it is the insurance industry. Imagine if they're one of our advocates. Imagine if they're one of our advocates. Okay? So that gives you the best answer. Okay? I can't.
We have a visitor here if you want to introduce someone.
There's my son Gaston, just walked in. Well, I want to thank you very much. Keep your ideas coming. We love your ideas. That's why we've been able to do the things that we can, is by listening. I think what Washington, D.C. needs to do a lot more of is pretend you're patient and listen to what the problem is, and then ask for the solution. One of the things I said earlier tonight when we were going through the ground rules, it's amazing what you learn from the people in your neighborhood. And I'm serious. We've actually had a couple conversations over in Mojave County where we had somebody get up and rant and rave. And the first thing out of my mouth was, what's your solution? They said, well, I don't have a solution. I said, okay, next question. So they came back again. They said, well, I got a solution for it. I said, okay. And the solution was brought up. I didn't answer it. I said, who agrees with that answer? And who disagrees? That's the part of civil discussion that we have to facilitate and have. And when we do, it may not be satisfactory. We're not going to win everything. I'm the first of 10 kids. There's 5 Democrats, 3 Republicans, 2 independents. First time my wife met them, she said, God, these people hate each other. And if you see my brothers, as my son will attest, I'm the smallest of the 7 boys. I still can lick them. And there's this thing that you can't beat up your oldest brother. And I don't want to test it, but my point is I didn't win every battle I got into. You can't expect that. But what you can expect is to have the dialogue and put your 2 cents in. Listen more. Find where you can move the ball. We also set a bar in our office to show people you can get this done. That frustration that you're talking about, how is it that one of the chief architects of the Freedom Caucus, you're looking at him, who's labeled as Congressman No, is the most accomplished member of Congress in his 2nd term? How does that work? Seriously, how does that work? Well, let me share something with you. When I find something that we have an issue with from our district, who's the first person I go to? A Democrat. Really? Yes. All those bills that I passed into law are bipartisan. And by the way, I didn't sacrifice any of my principles, by the way, either. So you can do this. And we're trying to show you the way that it can happen. To the point now that we have freshman legislators, freshman congressmen, begging to work with us on the appropriation process. I just had a comment from one of my seniors, one of my elders, saying, listen, Congressman Gosar, Paul, she told me Paul. She goes, Paul, all you want is the speaker to do your job. I go, excuse me. Excuse me. Don't you ever say that, Virginia. The speaker interrupted me. He goes, Virginia, that is not something you can say about Dr. Gosar. Nobody does his work for him. That guy does his own work. For the Speaker of the House to make that comment to one of our peers is everything to me. I don't know about you, I am really tired of being led. It is time that Arizona leads. We're capable of it. We got great ideas. We got the fortitude and the will to get it done. So you know what? It's going to be a difficult decision this year. You can do it. Make sure you ask those questions, and hold every single one of us feet to the fire, including me, please. That's how you're going to get the results. Our last Federalist paper, our framers asked, do we put term limits on them, or do we empower the elected to be well educated? My grandfather said, listen, if you're not sitting at the table of politics, you're being served on the table of politics. I don't taste very good. I'd rather be eating. So, good night.